Hey there, sheepdoggers, and welcome to another Blood Bowl 2 tips, hints, help, skills, and subbly bars. Today I'm going to be talking about mutation skills and the kind of extra skills you get on your players. For example, things like, where is it? Wild animal. So we'll go, I'm showing you a, let's just go to the kickoff. First, because I'm not going to be talking about team makeup or anything like that. That'll do. You can see his first turn, he knocked down my Minotaur. So yeah, we're going to talk about mutations, which is why I have my my Chaos here. I'm not sure any of them actually have mutate. Ah, yes, this guy has extra arms. So because the mutations are for the Chaos and for the Skaven, you know, like, I'll be talking about those two teams, you know, when you might want them, and that kind of thing. And then the extraordinary skills are just, you know, in general, we'll be talking about them. Okay, so let's just go through. This may not last the entire game, and I apologize about that. I just want something backing while we talk about these skills, like I always do. So the first one is the mutation skill Big Hand, which basically means that the player who has big hands ignores enemy tackle zones when attempting to pick up the ball. Now, I find this is almost a... That's unfortunate. I find this is almost a have to take on at least one of your players. And the reason this is so is because ignoring the tackle zone, especially for the Skaven, is so useful. You know, the idea of the idea of having, you know, kind of a ball here and being able to dodge in there and just deal with, you know, and just not have to have the minus, you know. So if the ball was there and you know, there were kind of three players around it, it would be a terrible chance to pick it up, even with 4 agility. With the big hand, it means it's still, with 4 agility, it's still going to be a 2+, which means you only have to worry about your dodges. So, you know, for the Skaven, I'd say, you know, a gutter runner with big hand is a perfect choice. You know, a beastman who has maybe extra arms or a plus agility, or a chaos warrior with plus agility. Again, you know, you can kind of modify these things as and how you feel, you know, you can play with it and such, but definitely consider a big hand when you get the chance, especially as Skaven. I'd say it's a great choice. The next one up is Claw. Now this is one that you've probably faced a lot if you play against the Chaos. What it does is, when an opponent is knocked down by the player during a block, any armor roll of 8 or more after modifications automatically breaks armor. What that means is, even if you're playing against dwarves or orcs, if you roll an 8 or more, that will break the armor. So even the black orcs, or, you know, anything like that, act as if they are Skaven. So that gives you the chance to break the armor. And this is one of the strengths of the Chaos team, is if you get a lot of players with Claw, as long as you're knocking the guys down, you're going to be, you know, basically treating them like they're Skaven, and you're going to be getting much better chances to create injuries and knockouts, and basically clear the pitch. So this is one of the reasons why people feel that Chaos are massively overpowered and all of those kind of things, you know. But I'll talk about that in another video probably. You know, I'm just here to talk about the skills today. Disturbing presence. Okay, so with the Claw, obviously, you know, any character really can have it. You know, even a gutter runner if you want. But obviously, it's better on your stronger players. You know, your rat ogres, your chaos warriors. It's usually not a first pickup either. However, you can choose it as a first pickup, for example, on the Storm Vermin. You know, having a Storm Vermin with block and claw, and then maybe Mighty Blow after that can be a great choice for a Skaven team, just to get rid of those players who are too dangerous to leave on the pitch. The same with, you know, creating a fouling a Skaven player as well. Disturbing Presence. Any player must subtract 1 from their agility for any attempted passes, interceptions, or catches if they are within 3 squares of that player. Now, I'm not sure. I do tend to take Disturbing Presence on one of my Beastmen. I haven't done it yet. It's kind of like a red square, like a very faint red square around your player. So, okay, well, if we just give it a second, there we go. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. So this kind of area around this guy here, up to here, up to about here, I believe. Yeah, all of this would be Disturbing Presence, and it's great because it works even if the player is on the floor. So even if this guy was down, that would still apply. You know, it doesn't affect picking up the ball, but it does affect passing. It does affect passing, it does affect interceptions, and also catching. So if you've got a really annoying War Dancer, for example, or if you've got a Dark Elf player with, you know, with Dump Off on his runner, or just a player with Dump Off or anything, you know, you can get your Disturbing Presence guy in there, and then when the Dump Off happens, or when they try and throw to the catcher, or the when they try to throw to the catcher or the War Dancer or whatever, it just makes it that much harder for them to catch, which is really, really useful, especially with a Chaos team who have problems in those areas of kind of dealing with elves without injuries. So the next mutation up is Extra Arms. Player with extra arms adds +1 to all catch, interception, or pick up ball tests, which basically means, where is he? I think yeah, there he is. This guy here, Painted Lady, has extra arms, which means that when it comes to picking up the ball, catching, or intercepting the ball, he treats it like he's an elf, which is so useful. And definitely worthwhile as an early pickup. You know, once you've got a few people with block, a few beastmen with block to stand on the line, it's great to have. Again, with the Skaven, the Gutter Runners, even possibly a Blitzer if he gets plus agility or something, it's another decent choice. But on the Chaos, I'd say it's almost a necessity to have one player. You know, if you give him extra arms, if you give him extra arms, block, maybe strip ball, what that will mean for you is you will have a kind of defensive player who can always stay at the back. You know, maybe give him leader if he gets a double, who will always stay at the back, and he can pick up the ball and hand it off to someone else. You know, it just reduces the chance that you're going to need to use rerolls picking up the ball, basically. You know, it will happen that you'll have to pick up the ball, but still. Foul Appearance is the next skill. The player's appearance is so horrible that any opposing player must pass a foul appearance roll to be able to block him. 1 in 6 chance. So basically, it's like a going for it, almost. I mean, if you fail, there won't be a turnover, but if you have a ball carrier, it can mean, you know, it can be that extra skill. You know, if you're devoid of anything, if you're kind of no idea of what to put on your level 6 Skaven Gutter Runner, and he gets a double, or you know, you have a ball carrier with like extra arms and etc. Just giving him foul appearance means that the likelihood of him picking up that ball is just that little bit smaller. So it can be a great extra skill. I wouldn't say it's ever a first pick, but it's definitely a great extra skill. So the next up is Horns. A player with Horns gains +1 in strength when he performs a blitz action. Now you can see here all Beastmen have Horns, which means they're very strong as a blitzing team. And again, the Minotaur has Horns as well, which means, you know, it's not obviously as useful to give your Chaos Warriors Horns, really. I mean, it's a possible one, but for the most part, I wouldn't advise it. Whereas as a Skaven team, giving horns to a blitzer or just a regular line rat is worthwhile because it will make them have 4 strength. Along with other skills, it can be great. That's a nice touchdown, by the way. So yeah, there's not too much to be talking about for that. I'd say it's at least fairly obvious with horns when to take it and who to take it on. Anyone who you use as a blitzer on a regular occurrence, or obviously with the Chaos team, you already have horns. So next up is Prehensile Tail. Opposing players must subtract 1 from the d6 roll if they attempt to dodge out of any of the player's tackle zones. What this is great on is a sticky player, maybe someone with guard, quite often a big guy like the Minotaur. The Rat Ogre starts with it, and the Lizard Man Crocskull actually starts with it too. And it's really great to move into a cage. So if you have your Minotaur or your Rat Ogre with Prehensile Tail, you get into that elf cage, and it means that they're dodging away on a 3 agility instead of 4 agility, assuming they just have that 4 agility. So it's a great one to use, especially with things like stand firm or sidestep. Things like these can be great. Obviously, it's harder to get sidestep with the Minotaur or the Rat Ogre, but if you get a chance, it is quite useful. Again, stand firm, guard. But Prehensile Tail is a very useful one to have, especially when you're facing teams that are repeatedly just always dodging out of base-to-base combat with you. Next one up is Tentacles. To successfully dodge away from a player with tentacles, the opposing player must pass a strength test. So, that's a great example of something that you're probably going to want to use on your Minotaur. Quite often, I'll use tentacles on a Minotaur. Again, adding Prehensile Tail to it is a nice choice. But basically, it does mean, again, that it stops those annoying elves or whoever from dodging out of your way, and you can keep them base-to-base contact, so you can keep punching them and knocking them down. Obviously, on a Rat Ogre as well, he needs to get doubles, but still, they can be very useful. I'd say less useful in general on a Skaven team, unless you get kind of a plus strength character or something. So next up is Two Heads. Adds +1 to all dodge rolls if the player makes. So that's, again, it's like adding, it's like having a 4 agility player, just without the necessary roll. So it means, what the mutations means is you can be very inventive with how you build your players, So you don't need a 4 agility. You don't need a +1 agility to get a decently dodgy Beastman. So if you get a double, give one of your Beastmen dodge, then the next time you can give them 2 heads, and they'll have the equivalent of 4 agility and dodge. So these things can be really useful for building your players, especially as the Chaos, who don't start with any real specialization. Aside from the Chaos Warriors having 4 strength, they're a very standard team, and the Horns, of course, help a little bit, but that's only 1 a turn. And then the last one on mutations is very long legs. +1 to interception and leap. Prevents the use of safe throw skill. So that can be useful, especially if you decide to make a player a bit more mobile, a bit more agility based. So if you want to intercept or, do a leap, do a kind of blitzing player with leap, obviously you take block, and then you can take wrestle, or you can take strip ball, and you can actually give him long legs, and then you've got a very adequate blitzer, for getting into those cages and things. Obviously you have to give him leap as well, but, Yeah, it's very possible. Okay, so those are the mutations. There aren't that many. Obviously, the most obvious combo would be Mighty Blow and Claw. You want block as well, but you know that those kind of combos, like just play around with mutations, see what works for you. Now I'm just going to go through the list of extraordinary skills and talk about them a little bit. You know, mostly they're kind of fairly standard, and I imagine you already know them. But I figured that just talking about mutations wasn't really enough for a Blood Bowl video. So I'm going to talk about the extraordinary skills, as called. Always hungry. This is, for example, on a troll. The player has a 1 in 6 chance of devouring his teammates when he tries to throw him. If the victim fails to squirm free, they are eaten, which kills the teammate without a chance of recovery. If the victim manages to escape, it is considered a fumble. So basically, when you try and throw that goblin, which, let's face it, is very, very fun in an orc team, there is a chance that the troll will eat that goblin. However, it's very hilarious, and, you know, there's nothing you can do to stop it. So, you know, you just be aware that when you throw your goblin, you may lose him. Okay, so Bonehead. Before attempting any action, they must pass a Bonehead test, 1 in 6 chance. If they fail this, then they may not take any actions for the remainder of the turn. In addition, they lose their tackle zone. So, all you need to do is avoid rolling a 1. It will happen, but not on as usual basis as some of the others. So, you know, this is why the Croxagore on the Lizardman team and the Ogre on the human team are much more viable starting out, especially just purely because they fail a lot less. You know, we'll go on to things like Really Stupid and Wild Animal, but for now, that's the reason that makes them much more viable. Next up is Chainsaw. Player armed with a chainsaw must attack an opponent. Roll a d6. On a roll of 2 or more, chainsaw hits the opposing player. On a roll of 1, it kicks back. This wasn't present in Blood Bowl 1, and obviously, you know, I'm going by the kind of Blood Bowl skills right now. So, I'm not sure if this will be included in Blood Bowl 2. In Blood Bowl 1, obviously, there was a goblin with a chainsaw, but as far as I'm aware, you didn't have to make him attack an opponent. So, let's just say, you know, if that makes it in, then it's going to be interesting to be a goblin team. But for now we won't worry about it too much. And of course, the chainsaw killing, casualty or killing or anything doesn't earn SPP. So if you're playing a goblin team, especially when the goblins come out, it will mean that your chainsaw secret weapon, you know, obviously he doesn't earn SPP for getting injuries and that. So you don't tend to level him up much at all. But in himself, he's very, very useful. Okay, so Loner. Loner's a very important thing to talk about because you will come across it. Loners are not great team players. If they wish to use a team reroll, they must successfully pass a Loner roll, 1 in 2 chance. If they fail, the reroll is lost. So a great example of this is, for example, the big guys. Like the Minotaur, who you can see here. There it is. What it means is if you get, for example, 2 skulls on your block roll, you can try to reroll it, but the likelihood is, I mean, 50-50 chance that you will lose the reroll and you'll have to stick with the 2 skulls. So it can be very annoying, which is why very often you'll be wanting to use that Minotaur last, if possible, or that big guy last, because otherwise you run the risk, and it is just a risk, but it's still a decent risk of getting a turnover before you can, you know, before you've had a chance to do the rest of your turn, the more important things. And it's a failure that, you know, I do as well sometimes. When you get excited, when you're looking for that injury, you'll be like, well, then what's the chances of me getting 2 skulls? And that tends to be when you get the 2 skulls. Bye, Selby. Deaths are never fun. Although I think he actually got double dead. Which, you know, will happen to you, so you'll just have to accept it when it does. Yeah, it is double dead. Okay, so next up is Really Stupid. The player has a 1 in 2 chance of becoming really stupid and may not perform any actions for the rest of the turn. In addition, they use their tackle zone. If a teammate is standing adjacent to the player, the chance to fail is reduced to a 1 in 6 chance. So you need a 2+ if a teammate is standing next to him. If they aren't, you need a 4+. Now, what this means in effect, and it's one of the reasons why I don't like using trolls in the orc teams, is that you will more often than not use up your one of your players to make sure that that troll keeps moving, keeps doing things. Because a 1 in 2 chance isn't great, and it's much better to have the 2+. It's extremely annoying, and it's one of the reasons why I don't advocate trolls starting off, just purely because too often they become a useless player, especially if the opposing team realizes this and starts smacking your guys off your troll. It can be a definite rough time. Okay, so next up is regeneration. If the player is injured or killed after any attempts by the apothecary, they have a 1 in 2 chance to regenerate themselves and placed in reserves ready for the next drive. Now, the example of players that have this is a troll at this current moment in time. However, there are teams, I think the undead have regeneration, but I know for certain that a lot of the players on the necromantic team, like the flesh golems, have regeneration. Very useful, and it does mean you suffer less deaths and injuries, but you will still suffer them. So you shouldn't pick if you're thinking to yourself, well, if I have a team with loads of regeneration, I'll lose less players. Not really. A lot of the time you will still lose that player, and you just have to accept the loss of players. Even amazing players will happen. Right stuff enables a player to be thrown by a teammate who possesses the throw teammate skill. Basically, halflings and tree men and trolls and goblins. Very, very fun to be able to throw your teammate. Secret weapon. At the end of a drive or half, the player will automatically be sent off by the referee. What this means is they have, for example, the death roller on the dwarf team. And as soon as a touchdown is scored, or it's the end of a half, that player will be sent off unless you have a bribe. Which is why goblins, tend to get a lot of bribes if they can, and which is why the dwarf death roller is a very difficult tool to use. A lot of dwarf players will get the death roller and then bring him out at the beginning of the enemy attack. And the reason this is a problem is because if you're playing against an elf team, which can run rings around a dwarf team, those elves will quite literally just destroy. They won't even pay any attention to the fight, and they'll just get a touchdown as soon as possible, and then the death roll is sent off, or you've already used one of your bribes. Either way, it's a very standard tactic to deal with players with secret weapons. Okay, next one up is stab, which is an interesting one. My god, that guy is a big one. Okay, next up is stab. A player may attack an opponent with their stabbing attack instead of throwing a block. Make an unmodified armor roll. If the score is less or equal to the victim's armor value, then the attack has no effect. If the score beats the victim's armor value, then they have been wounded and an unmodified injury roll must be made. If stab is used part of blitz, can't continue moving after it. Casualties caused by stab don't count towards star player points, which is XP, For normal players, there's only the Dark Elf Assassin, but there are some star players who have it as well. This is the quintessential Chaos team, just smacking people about basically. I always feel a bit guilty. I'm not much of a bashy team player, to be honest. But with stab, it's good, but you don't get points for it, so it's very much like a targeted thing. You can't choose it, obviously, So it's pretty much the only one you'll see it on is the Dark Elf Assassin. But it's one of those ones which, for the most part, isn't worth it, because usually the player you want to take out is like a big guy, and you know, like an 8 arm value means you need a 9+. And if it fails, then you're left standing next to a giant freaking Minotaur who's about to crush you, for example. So next up is Stunty, another great one, another one that's really useful to know what it does. A player with Stunty may ignore any enemy tackle zone on the square he is moving to when he makes a dodge, but subtract 1 from the roll when they pass. In addition, add 1 to any injury roll. Stunties that are armed with a secret weapon are not allowed to ignore enemy tackle zones. So the secret weapon bit isn't important yet, however, when the goblins come in, it will be. So if you have a chainsaw or a pogo, you know, they don't count as stunty. But they still get the +1 to injury rolls and +1 to pass. Subtract 1, sorry, to pass. What this means is that teams like goblins, teams like lizardmen, cannot... I mean, they can be technically, but you should never be trying to make them not blitzers, sorry, I saw the blitzer word there and said blitzers. You shouldn't be trying to make them into a passing team. That's why they are a running team. That's why they do handoffs. Because with 3 agility, they then have to act as if they have 2 agility when they're passing. So it's never a great idea to try and turn them into passers, even with +1 agility and things like that. You know, they've got the movement for a reason, and they should be handing off and running around. So with the stunty, with the tackle zones, it would mean that if I ran my skink through here, for example, I'd still act as if I was running through with 3 agility. If you tried to run an elf through here, they'd, you know, have to get 4 and 5 pluses because there's so many tackle zones. So what it means is, you know, it's very useful especially when you need to take a chance to get that winning touchdown or something, to just run through the enemy tackle zones. Especially if you get agility 4 on one of your lizardmen or something, on one of your skinks. You can end up having a really nice... you can end up having a really nice opportunity to score. Okay. Then we have Take Root. A player who fails their Take Root roll has their movement allowance reduced to 0 until the end of the drive, or they are knocked over. Now, this is very much similar to the secret weapons, and it's only apparent, as far as I know, on the Ents, the tree men. And what it means is, if you roll a 1, which is usually the Take Root roll, as far as I know, you will take root. And in effect, unless anyone is in a tackle zone, that player will become useless. And it's one of the reasons why the Wood Elves, while having the tree man is a nice idea, it's the reason why I never advise it. Because basically, at the end of the day, it's too much a thing of luck as to whether you'll actually manage to get that guy going, and most of the time it will fail in a match. You know, it's just one of those things. You know, the chances aren't great. It's another KO. Throw teammates. You know, we've talked about throwing teammates and always hungry and that. So I don't feel I need to go into that. But basically, Goblin, Halfling, you can throw them with or without the ball. One interesting thing I haven't mentioned is that if you throw them into a player, you can actually injure that player. I have, in the past, on an Orc team, killed a star player. Not like a, you know, horrible star player. Just I have killed the opposing team's best player by throwing a dwarf on top of a goblin on top of them, which is satisfying and hilarious. And the last one is Wild Animal. The player can become uncontrollable during a match and must pass a Wild Animal test to successfully perform an action. There is a 1 in 2 chance that they will be able to carry out the action required. This is increased to a 5 in 6 chance in case of a block or blitz. So what this means is, and it's the Rat Ogre and the Minotaur. We can actually see that here. There is the wild animal. And basically what that means is if you as an opposing player against these guys, I couldn't remember if that was an injury or not. If you are in base to base on your turn with them, when it gets to the Minotaur's turn, all he needs is a 2+ to throw that block and to keep doing damage. However, if you dodge out the way of him and you stay out of his tackle zones, unless he uses up his blitz, he'll have to roll a 4+. Which means as a Chaos player, as a Skaven player, if you have that big guy with Wild Animal, you will almost definitely be in a bit of trouble. You know, because they're going to get, until you have things like possibly Prehensile Tail on the Minotaur or Tentacles on either of them, they're going to be able to dodge out of your tackle zones and leave you having to use up that blitz when in fact you'd probably like to use the blitz against the ball carrier or, you know, something along those lines. So yeah, you know, it's a useful skill. It's not a terrible skill, is what I mean. You know, compared to the really stupid, but it is not as good as boneheaded, which is why, you know, again, the Minotaur and the Rat Ogre aren't quite as viable as the there we go. The Minotaur and the Rat Ogre aren't quite as viable, especially starting off, as the Crocscar and the Ogre. So yeah, that's all of the skills, guys. That's all of them, really, at all. Let me know in the comments whether you'd like me to go into kind of specific builds for characters, because, you know, like right now I'm kind of looking at the wiki and kind of reading out the skills and then giving you my thoughts. The other thing I can do is talk about, you know, I can do like maybe 2 teams per video and talk about how to build your players and possible builds you might consider and that kind of thing, you know. Like at the end of the day, I realize I'm kind of helping people kick my ass on the stream when I stream Blood Bowl. But at the end of the day, I think that happens regardless of whether I help you guys or not. So, so yeah, you know, like, I hope you enjoyed this video. Do let me know. Well, I mean, obviously the score was 2-1, and they're just moving their guys off a little bit. But do let me know if you'd like to see kind of ideas for building players on certain teams. You know, how should I build this lineman? What are my options in regards to skills and stuff? Because I can do that as well as everything else. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. There will of course be more skitters and my YouTube teams. The videos will be coming very soon. And yeah. This match is pretty much over. It was a fun match. You know, every now and then my Skaven do damage. And I'll see you guys in the next video.